Hello and welcome to the Blessings in the Streets podcast. I am your host, Joseph B. Roberts, and today in studio, I have two brothers that I have known for quite some time. These men are men of God, they are attorneys, they are husbands, they are fathers, and they have taken some time out of their busy schedules to just share a little bit of their journey with us of overcoming adversity and challenging moments in life. So, without any further delay, allow me to introduce to you Mr. Eric Andrews and Mr. Steve Pipkin. Brothers, welcome to the studio. Welcome to the show. Thank you for taking time out of your schedules. It's a pleasure having you.
Thank you for having us, Joseph.
Absolutely.
Definitely. Good morning, Joe.
Absolutely, absolutely. So before we jump into things, I do want to give an opportunity for each of you to just share with the audience a little bit about yourself. So I'll jump to you, Eric, first, and just tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, a little bit about what you do, and whatever else you'd like to share at this time.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So I'm an attorney Eric Andrews here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Born and raised in Milwaukee. I work for a law firm called Dunk Law Firm. We have headquarters in Houston, Texas. I'm currently running the Milwaukee office of Dunk Law Firm. We specialize in personal injury, wrongful death cases on the plaintiff side. Again, I am from Milwaukee, born and raised here. I have a wife, two kids, a dog, two cats, and a goldfish. Also, we have a new gecko. So we got a little Noah's Ark going on here, I guess, at the house. But yeah, so that's a little bit about me. Born and raised here, and I'm just happy to be on this broadcast.
All right, I appreciate that. Yeah, you do have a little Noah's Ark going on, and it's interesting that you say you have a pet gecko because, of course, here in Texas, geckos are like the normal, just kind of being out and about around your house and everything else. So you don't even have to have a. They're sort of, pets that just come upon you just because you don't even have to own one. They just make
Right.
themselves at home if they want to. So, so that's pretty cool. All right, and my brother Steve, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I'm Steve Pipkin. I'm also a plaintiff personal injury attorney. I do the same practice as Brother Eric, familiar with his firm out of Houston. I have my own firm, the Pipkin Law Firm, that I guess I started in about 2007. I've been practicing 30 years. Married, three daughters, and I'm actually from Dallas, born in Denver, but I've lived in Dallas since I started first grade in Dallas. So that officially makes it from Dallas. And also happy just to be a part of the program.
Absolutely, absolutely. And great to have you on board. I met Steve. Steve goes to my church, and we both serve as deacons at our church as well. So, it was a pleasure having you on the show, and I thought this would be a great idea to link you up with my brother Eric here. Of course, with you all being in the same line of work, and it's always good. Of course, we don't want to minimize the fact of being African American men from big cities like this, and we're going to delve into that to come into being into your respective careers and be doing dominant work, doing some great works in your respective areas. So I definitely wanted to that's an early celebration to bring that on because you brothers just even being here and doing what you do is a representation to some young men who might aspire to want to do what you do someday. So again, glad to have you here. So I want to elaborate a little bit more, of course, about your backgrounds, and we're going to start as with any journey that you're on. When you talk about your life journeys, you can't really get into that without going back to the beginning, and that's where we're going to go to right now. So I'm going to jump it back to you, Eric, and just ask you, tell us a little bit about what was it like a young black man growing up in the city of Milwaukee. A lot of people may or may not know about life in Milwaukee. So just kind of tell us what that was like, fond memories that you had, as well as if there was any particular challenges that you had to overcome in your time growing up. What do you remember about that whole experience?
Definitely, definitely. So, for people that may not know about Milwaukee, it's one, if not the most segregated city in the country. Um, Growing up in Milwaukee was a challenge like any other major city. Um, when I first started school, I went to Milwaukee. The way it's divided is you have the inner city, like most urban areas, and then the outskirts is where the non-minorities live, right? So um, I grew up going to Milwaukee public schools, and it was some point when I got done with middle school. There was a program called the Chapter 220 program, and what it did was it bused students from the inner city to suburban schools to do some sort of kind of social justice or whatever type of programming it was. I My grandma at that time, she took advantage of that program and she sent me to a predominantly white school, Nicolay High School in Milwaukee. It's actually in Glendale. Um, that experience was a little bit challenging at first, because you come from an urban environment, where everybody looks like you, and you go to an environment where not everybody, you are the actual minority, and it's a little bit daunting at first, but it did um, give me an opportunity to experience life outside of the city of Milwaukee, and it actually prepared me for when I went to college, undergrad at UW Eau Claire, where Joe and I both went to school at, and it kind of prepared me for that transformation eventually when I went there because I was sort of acclimated to those environments at that point. From a personal level, I grew up in a single parent household. Grew up with my mom. My dad wasn't really around. Um, my mom had struggles with drugs when I was growing up, so that was a big thing in my life at the time, because I had to, not only try to become a man, but also dealing with that as well. Fortunately, even though my dad wasn't around, I did have um, who I call my surrogate dad, my uncle. He's my uncle Francis. He's a my mom's sister's husband. So I've known him my whole life. And he was sort of the father formulative figure for me. He would always come and talk to me about things that were going on in my life. He would always just be there, when you don't have a dad. So things I couldn't talk to necessarily about to my mom about, he was always there for me and he's still there for me today. So he's one of the big reasons why I am who I am today. I give him a lot of credit for that, and God put him in my life for a reason. So, but with the struggles with everything with my mom and her drug addiction and things like that, we still had a somewhat healthy relationship. We tried. There were bumps in the road for that and everything, but at the end of the day, my mom did pass away in 2016. And I know that we're going into another chapter with that, so I can kind of talk about that at that moment. But and so that's kind of my background at this point. If there's anything else I have to add on, let me know.
Okay. I am curious to know, with your work as an attorney, at what point in your upbringing did you actually know that that was a path that you wanted to follow?
Yeah. So when I was at UW Eau Claire, I started off wanting to be an accountant. I like numbers. I did like numbers at that point, but then I got to a point where, like I said, hey, this is not for me. So I started off. My first year was pretty good. My second year, I got off a little bit too much into the party. So I actually got on academic um, probation, warning, and then probation. And then at some point, I met this political science professor. His name was Dr. Leonard Gambrell. And I went to his office one day after I signed up for a class he taught. It was called Dilemmas of War and Peace. I still remember that class. And we talked for probably about a half hour, and during that conversation, and he was a white male, so I wasn't really used to talking to white male professors and, about life stuff. But he really opened up, and we had a good conversation, like half hour, 45 minutes. And after that conversation, my mind just clicked. I said, look, he said, you're up here for a reason, take advantage of it. So after that point, my grades transformed, less partying, more school. And then I ended up graduating with a degree in political science with a legal studies emphasis. After graduation, I moved back to Milwaukee I work for a law firm here that practices insurance defense. So I was a paralegal there for a while. I graduated after working there as a paralegal. I actually decided to take the LSAT. You know, I was doing all the grunt work for these lawyers anyway, so I said I'm going to try to take this LSAT, and fortunately, I did take it, and I passed. I had scores high enough to get into a university in Indiana called Valparaiso University Law School. But at that point, I found out that my wife at the time was pregnant with my daughter, so I had to defer my admission. I essentially deferred that admission, applied to Marquette University Law School, and I started there the next year on the part-time program. So I was still working 40 hours a week at the law firm. I was going to law school at night, doing my part-time classes with a 2-year-old baby at home. So that was very trying and tough, but that kind of made me who I am today. You know, through adversity, you find strength in God, and He gets you through. So, and that's how I got to be where I am today.
Wow, that's an awesome story, awesome testimony, and I appreciate your transparency and not only sharing about your mom and that challenge, but I love the fact that you were okay with shifting gears. You tried one thing that you thought that was your path, and then you had an opportunity to speak with someone who just kind of opened up your mind to some options of going a different direction, and you embraced that. And
Yeah.
it's just a signal that even if you get off to a rough start, even in college, you can flip that thing around, and now you're locked into something that you're passionate about doing, and you're realizing success into that. So somebody needs to hear that message, and I'm glad that you shared that with us. Same question for you, Steve. Kind of tell us what it was like. I know you said you shifted to your move to Dallas happened when you were about first grade, but just kind of tell us what was your life like growing up, and fond memories that you have, and any specific challenges that come to mind that you had to deal with growing up.
Yeah, a little bit similar to Eric's, to be honest. My parents were married in Denver, and I think when I was about five and a half, they divorced, and my mother's family was here in Dallas, so she moved us back here to Texas and started elementary school in northern Dallas, around Walnut Hill Lane, and um, we were pretty much. I think I remember one other black kid in the neighborhood. So that was tough because, like he said, I was the only minority. I was the only one with hair like mine, um, skin like mine, but every other kid to play with were all white. And even in school, in elementary school, my sister and I were the only blacks until they started busing when I was and this is public school, and they started busing when I was in the fifth grade. And so from first grade to fifth grade, it's a different experience. There are definitely some strengths you take from it and learn from it, similar to his story, because you actually learn to be very comfortable um, around them. I mean, it's a tough transition at first, but then you become comfortable with them, and you have confidence that you can be vulnerable and develop really good friends and socialize with them and compete with them sports wise, academically, and everything else. So I think it was very good for me from that perspective, school wise. And then my parents ended up remarrying when I was almost 13, about 12 and a half, 13. So um, went through that, but the transition for elementary school and that foundation was really good. And I got put in a tag program that Dallas started. I want to say in '77, the first tag program they ever started. They took kids out of South Dallas, West Dallas, North Dallas, and put us all in this one school, Spence, in eastern Dallas, and that was an experience, and very very competitive. But at that point, I was accustomed to, and there were minorities in that program as well, so I wasn't like the only one. So um, that was good and shaped me a lot. But I kind of knew I wanted to be a lawyer when I was about 11. I used to argue with my sister a lot and watch a lot of Perry Mason, and my mother told me I should be a lawyer because I enjoyed debating trying to prove my point. And so I kind of embraced that in my mind at a young age, and continued to be in Dallas. Followed my sister to Houston, to the University of Houston, and then I was burnt out because I pushed myself hard in undergrad. So instead of going straight to law school, I took a job with Shell Oil Company as a sales rep and moved to Southern California for 2 years. Um, but then I realized if I really wanted to be a lawyer, I needed to jump on that. So I started taking LSAT prep courses at night, and then after 2 years, went back to University of Houston for law school. So um, from a background perspective, that's kind of it.
Okay. Okay. Again, interesting. That's an interesting journey with that, and thank you for your transparency and sharing a little bit about your background. And I kind of connect. I'm connecting with both of your stories because, I of course grew up in Chicago. Primarily being around black students that look like me, teachers that look like me. There would be a point in time that some of the schools that I went to, I had some more exposure from, whether it be in elementary school and then in some in high school where I got some exposure to being around some white students. Um, and I think that did help, as Eric stated earlier, transitioning to a university, like in our particular case, a predominantly white institution where the entire minority population was less than 1%. That's black students and everybody else. So you're talking about less than 100 students at one point in time that have some color, and then there's everybody else. And so when you're in an environment like that, it kind of goes two ways. For some of us, it's a great opportunity because it gives us a sense of, I guess, courage, if you will, a sense of feeling like as if we can overcome and conquer anything that we need to conquer in those situations because we understand that what we're worth it, we're good enough, we can handle um, being in situations like this, and that we don't have to feel like we're less than just because of the color of our skin or just because of where we come from. So I think that that's really, really important for us to, embrace that. And so I love the experiences that you're sharing in that regard. And again, I totally identify with that. And so, I appreciate you sharing that. And I just wanted to chime in on that because it does build that sense of confidence to let you know that, hey, I can hang with them too. I can hang with other kids who don't look like me, despite what the world might say that we, are not capable of doing such a thing in such an arena. So I'm thankful for those opportunities. So I'm glad that you shared that because it's so important. Because unfortunately, for some kids like us, black kids who come into those type of environments, we might be in situations where because it's such a culture shock for us that we don't know how to hang in, we don't know how to sustain, and we can sort of get lost. So we have bright students who don't make it because the university systems don't have support mechanisms in place to kind of help us to feel that, to feel in place, to feel wanted, to feel accepted, and so that can be challenging at times. So so again, thank you for sharing that. What I do want to ask you though, and we kind of as we go along in this journey that we're in our life journeys and our challenges and that adversities, one of the things is that you live long enough. The reality is that you're going to encounter a moment in time where something is going to hit a little bit different. There's going to be a challenge. There's going to be an obstacle that you might feel like you can't, you might have felt like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get through this particular situation. This is a little bit tougher than what I'm accustomed to. Of all the things that I've been able to get through, this feels a little bit heavier for me, and I'm not sure how I'm going to make it out. So back to you, Eric. If you would share with us, what was that moment like that you can reflect on for you that you'd be willing to share, that you felt like, hey, this when this happened, I just didn't know how I was going to make it through that. I didn't see a way out, but of course, obviously, again, you're here today to share that story, and I appreciate in advance whatever it is that you have to share for us. So please tell us what that journey was for you.
Well, it was a sort of a combination. Um, so again, I did share with you that growing up, I had some difficulties with my mom, and at some point, I moved out and lived with my grandma. She was the one who primarily raised me from middle school until high school until I graduated and went off on my own. So in 2016, my grandma passed away in June of that year, and my mom passed away in November.
Mm,
So that combination of things was very, very tough on me, and me being the only child, you know, my mom lived in Rochester, New York. So when she passed, I had to fly out there and handle all of her affairs, and she didn't really have a lot, as far as material things or things like that. But I had to go out, fly out there, make arrangements with the county to have her funeral things done, affairs taken care of, arrange for her remains to be flown back to Milwaukee so I could have a ceremony for her. So that year was really tough, especially, I was very, very close with my grandma, so living with her all those years and then my mom, my mom passing away, that was a tough year, and it was a dark time for me. I was just like, I didn't know what to do, so, but again, when I have trying times, I just try to, lean on family, lean on God, and try to get through it. So fortunately, I was, blessed to be able to kind of come out of that darkness and then, just get back. My family was a big part of that. They just kind of reaffirmed me that, hey, things happen. You did your best with your mom. There was some things about my mom that I regret not being able to talk to her about. When she's gone. So that was kind of a tough thing for me. But again, we pray and get through it, and I'm still here. So
absolutely. And I appreciate you sharing that. And I can personally testify to what you're saying because I know just from your social media posts and things of that nature, you always speak very fondly of your mom. And yet I didn't know that backstory of your mom until you just shared it today on the show. So that speaks to you about having that spirit of forgiveness, having that spirit
right,
of love and understanding. You haven't judged your mom. You haven't written her off, so to speak. You still honor her memory. You still honor her at the fact that she was your mother. She gave you life, and while she may have had some challenges and some difficulties, like you said, I did what I could as a son to be there for her all the way to the end. I still love her. I still honor her. I respect her, even with your grandmother as well. I know you post about that too. So I know what you're feeling and what you're speaking to. And so that again, that speaks volumes about the man that you are. To do that because there would be some who would be of a total mindset and you haven't embraced that. You've gone to you operated in a godly way in that regard, and that's important, and I appreciate that. That ups my level of the respect that I already have for you. It ups it even more just to hear you share that part of your life with us. So I appreciate that, man. You sharing that, and
yeah,
that's
thank
that's
you,
that's
thank
that's
you.
great about you, Steve. Tell us again for you, what was that moment like for you in life where something hit a little different? This was a little bit tougher for me to get through. I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to overcome it. What was that journey like for you, and how did you navigate through it?
Yeah, I was trying to think that I'd say the toughest thing probably was when actually my parents remarried.
Mm,
And that's not to say everything's just been perfect since then, because obviously I was, like I said, I think seventh grade, just about to start in seventh grade, something like that. But that was tough because I had no relationship with my father before then. I had no memory of him, even though I was 5 when they divorced. But I had no memory. And from age 5 to starting the seventh grade, there was no communication. There was no Christmas gift. There was no birthday card. There was no phone call. It was like we didn't exist. And it was a little tougher because his father, my grandfather, was like my hero. So that was my dude. He would send for me and fly me at 6 years old to Dallas on Braniff Airlines, and I would go to his house for a couple of weeks in the summers, and I did that all my life growing up from like 6 to that same seventh grade age. And while I was there in Denver, my dad's house in Denver was probably 6 minutes away. I mean, if you know Denver and Eastern Denver, you don't have to get on freeways and all that stuff necessarily to get somewhere. You can just take the streets. So it's pretty simple. So that made that tough to transition to all of a sudden he's here and living with us, and you know, because I didn't like him. We had struggles, growing up to that point with just my mom and my sister. Even though my mother was a school teacher and educator, we still had struggles. So I wasn't too happy about that. So that definitely took a period of time to actually forgive him and become obviously very good friends as I grew to being a young man in high school and after that and everything else. But yeah, so that was probably the toughest thing I can think of. Um, yeah, trying to
Wow.
yeah.
And that is an interesting story because I'm thinking, you would think that, hey, if my parents divorced when I was young and then they reconciled and they got back together, you would think that that would be, unless you knew that there was an abusive type of situation, you would think that that would be
No,
sort of a
he just wasn't
happy.
ready to be married at the time. He was,
Hmm.
they met in college. I think she was a just finished her freshman year. I think when they got pregnant with my sister, who's 2 years older, and then a year or two later I came, and so he was still just a young guy at that age when
Hmm.
they first had kids and got married, and hadn't had a chance to really finish being a young man, enjoying the boys and all of that. It wasn't any abuse though.
Hmm. And that's what I'm saying. It's just interesting because it's like with them getting remarried, it was almost like introducing a new man into your life because, like you said, you didn't really have much memory of him from the first go around.
Right,
So it was like, who's this guy? Oh, he's
right.
my dad, and he was here earlier, but now I'm having to relearn him and figure this out. And he's been away from us for a number of years, and now I'm having to make that adjustment. So I could see how that could be challenging. It's just an interesting twist to the story that you're sharing. But again, I heard you say, just as I heard Eric speak to, is the forgiveness component. The in over time, it was a process, but that and I'm assuming that the relationship in its own way began to get a little bit better over time. And I don't know if it ever got to the point that you ultimately would have desired for it to be. I'm not sure of that or not, but at least you were building on something from where it started from, and again, you embrace that spirit of forgiveness, which is critical, is key to the relationship even having a chance to flourish in any kind of way. So I appreciate you sharing that. That's a very uh, interesting story that you're sharing with that, and again, appreciate your transparency on that. Um, so as we talk about adversity, as we talk about challenges, and both of you have kind of alluded a little to this next thing that I'm about to ask, but just to officially just kind of hear it from you, I am curious to know when you do find yourself in the midst of adversity, whether it's a big deal or if it's something minor, if you have a particular routine, a particular process that you like to go through, that you just say, you know what, if today adversity is knocking on my door and I'm faced with this particular situation, walk us through what you tend to do to kind of process that so that whatever that adversity is doesn't consume you, but you're instead able to like lock in and focus and figure out a way to get through it without again it being overwhelming and consuming of you. So I'll jump back to you, Eric, and just kind of tell us what's your process for dealing with challenging and difficult times. What do you typically like to do that works for you?
Two things: meditation and prayer. My wife, she bought me this book, and it's a I don't know if you guys can see it, but it's a book that says Daily Prayers for Men, spiritual devotion, and I read it, every day, and sometimes the messages are, I feel, directly to me, so some days I'm feeling a certain way, and if I'm, the practice of law has its own difficulties anyway. So starting off on the defense side, that was very difficult. Doing defense work because as a black male, there aren't a lot of insurance defense lawyers. So that was one difficulty that I had to encounter on that side. And on this side, on the plaintiff side, it's a little bit more difficult. And I'm sorry for these background noises. I'm not quite sure what's going on out there. But on the plaintiff side, it's a little bit more difficult because you have to be more of a nurturer. You have to be, sometimes when you have clients that are going through difficult times, you have to be a counselor. You have to do those various types of things, which was new for me. But some days I come in and it's like, can I really do this today? Am I really in the right mindset to deal with people? Because sometimes people project their difficulties that they're going through on a day-to-day basis out on you because you're the person they talk to about their problem. You're the person that's supposed to get them the compensation they need. You're supposed to be the person. So every day when I wake up, I have to, get my mindset right. I read the devotional. I have another app that I use where I have, spiritual kind of words that, get me through the day. So every day I start off like that. And when I'm encountering issues that are, really bothering me, I meditate. I'll go into a quiet place and just kind of get away from the wife and kids and just think about it. When I think about things and kind of put them into perspective, that helps me, breathing deep, getting in tune with my body and my mind and everything, and that helps me. So I would just say meditation and prayer are really what gets me through some of the difficult things that I encounter in practice and in life. So
Absolutely, absolutely, and that sounds like some a good regiment for you. And like you said, if that's working for you, and I imagine that it is with the prayer and the and staying focused on God's word. And I like the fact that you're clearly making this a lifestyle thing. So you're not waiting for something to happen before you start, staying on point with this. And that's important for people to
right,
understand that I don't want to wait till the storm has arrived and then start praying and then start trying to understand what God wants me to know. But I have to get myself, stay prepared, stay armored up, if you will, for such moments. And just one thing real quick, you spoke about the challenges, of course, with your career in law and, and depend upon the clients and the challenges that you have with that. I'm curious to know, like, how does it affect you when you have a like a case, that you're working for somebody and you don't get the outcome that you desire to get for them, or they're dissatisfied with the outcome. Maybe you're cool with the outcome that you felt like, hey, I did what we could do, but they're dissatisfied with it. How does that impact you from, I guess, a mental and emotional standpoint? How do you process those moments when they happen?
it's difficult. It's difficult. So, for instance, sometimes we have cases that we take on, and they may be questionable as far as recovery, liability, things of that nature. And I had to have a conversation with a woman probably about 4 or 5 months ago, and she was really injured in the case, right? She had this slip and fall, and she really injured her tailbone and various things on her body. But ultimately, the liability wasn't there because the hazard that was there was literally like 10 seconds before she fell. So in that situation in Wisconsin, I'm not sure how it is in other parts of the state, but we have a safe place statute, right? That says that in order, you got negligence and you got safe place. And between the both of those theories, I couldn't find the liability on this company, for her injury. 10 seconds is not a long enough time for a company to realize that there's a hazard, correct it, and warn people, right? So I had to. She was very emotional on the phone call. I had to, we basically had to drop the case, and she was very emotional, and she was tearful. And again, even though I had to drop the case, I had to be as supportive for her as I could. I said I understand, and I wish that there was something that we can do, and I wish that, the situation was different. I wish that we could pursue this, but again, I had to reiterate the fact that we couldn't, and although it hurt her, I think that she appreciated the fact that, I was trying to be sympathetic to her
Hmm.
issues, and that I was communicating to her every reason why we couldn't. So that's the difficult part of the job. It's a lot of times when you have to. Well, there's a lot more to that, but That's a difficult part when you have to drop a case when you know someone is emotionally invested in it and they have issues that are really, permanent, And
Hmm.
secondarily is when you do your best, like you just kind of alluded to, you do your best for someone, you get a great result, and they still dog you. Like I had a case where a lady, I probably got her way more money than she was supposed to get in this case, And at the end of the day, she remembered one conversation that I had with her when I was like, "Well, I'm telling you the law, and I'm giving you everything that I've done for you to get you what you need." And I said, basically, if you felt like you could do better, then I mean, you can get some another lawyer to do it for you, But I'm getting you the best results you can get. And she just took that and ran with it and was like, "Oh, he's being there," And I'm like, really, So it's situations like that that can kind of get you where you don't want to be, But at the end of the day, you just got to know in your heart that you did the best that you can and that you could do for your clients, and that's how I sleep. I say, look, even if you're not conveying gratitude towards, I'm not asking for you to be, oh, this and that, But even if you're upset with the result that you have, and I think that I did my best to get you the best result that I could, I sleep well at night knowing in my heart that I did all I could to get you the best that you can get. So, um, but there are some situations like that that come up where people, don't seem to appreciate the work you do. But again, you just have to, let it roll off and know in your heart what you did.
Hmm. And that's good stuff that you're sharing there. And immediately as you were talking through that, it took me back to your story about you and your mom and
Mhm.
having to deal with the challenges of that. And I don't believe that things in life happen, per se by accident. You had to go through the experience that you went through with your mom to sort of build that, not only that tough skin for challenging times, but to have that compassion for people who may not quite understand, who may not be fully getting the big picture of what you're trying to do. And so, like you said, you fast forward to today, and you're dealing with some cases that come about from time to time where you've done your best. But even in doing your best, and even knowing that the person that you represented may not have fully appreciated what you've done, you still offer that compassion and understanding. Well, hey, I'm here to serve you. I did what I could. I appreciate the opportunity. And just knowing that, like you said, you could sleep at night knowing that you gave it your all to that case,
Yeah.
regardless of whether or not you got the accolades for it, regardless of whether or not the person thought you did enough. You know in your heart that you represented at the highest level, professionally and ethically. In regards to being alongside them in that particular moment and challenge that they had. So that was immediately the connection that I'm making with that, and that's why I say it's so important about that journey. We don't understand in the moment why we go through or experience certain things, not knowing that it's preparing us for something that could be years and years down the road. And to me, that's an example of what you're being able to be equipped and be in that position that you're in as an attorney. Because I don't think everybody can just do that job, and it's not about just an academic mindset. There's a lot of people who may be able to get a degree in law and may be able to practice law, but I think it's more than just knowing law, but also understanding people and relating with people and being able to walk through that element of it. So that's good. That's good that you mentioned that, and I appreciate you sharing that. Same question for you, Steve. Just when you face adversity, challenging times, difficult times, what is your process for sort of dealing with such moments? How do you work through those times without it, you know, running the risk of it consuming you and getting you feeling like you're in a stuck position? What do you like to do?
Uh, I mean, really, again, it's kind of Eric and I are similar. It's prayer. For me and my process, it's always been, basically asking God to order my steps. So when I was a young lawyer and I was thinking of changing from the first firm to the second firm, I asked him to order my steps and let my decision be a decision that would be his will, rather than mine. And then that way I could live more with the result. If it ended up being a great move for me, or if it ended up being an okay move for me, but maybe I should have stayed there or whatever. If I put it in his hands and verbally and through prayer asked him to basically guide it and bless it, then I was done with it at that point. So the tough moments are the same thing, be they family situations, deaths, things dealing with the job. Then all of that is done through just some repeated prayer and focus, and letting that be the same way. And because we practice in the same areas, I have the exact same stories. I mean, I'm a 30-year plaintiff personal injury attorney, and believe me, what he's saying is absolute gospel. You've got cases where you wonder, why did they even pay this woman this much money? You're really not sure, because it can be so arbitrary, Or then you have other cases, where maybe you go try the case for a week and you had overwhelming evidence and an amazing client, and I've had some where they came back and they found in the lady's favor, but they said, well, we felt like the doctors took advantage of her. And so instead of giving her even all of her meds and, additional things for her pain, which she had, they gave her just a small percentage of even her medical bills. And you're sitting there just wondering, how's that possible? Because you've had other cases with clients who weren't as nice and genuine and deserving as this one particular lady was. I'm thinking about a particular lady named Effie Marshall. But yeah, so with me, any of those struggles, it's definitely resorting back to prayer and just allowing Him to let it be His will, however that turns out. So,
Great, great. And just a quick follow up question for you, just from based off of what you just said. What would you what would be your advice to people? And really, either one of you can answer this. But I'll ask you first, Steve. What would be your advice to people who are in need of legal representation? What are some key things that they need to be thinking about in selecting who they have to represent them? Because I trust that all lawyers are not created equal in terms of not only expertise, but again, in terms of compassion, in terms of how they deal with people. What are just some key basics that when you need somebody, this is what you need to sort of be your checklist of what you're looking for in getting proper representation for yourself?
am I first?
Yes, go ahead.
Oh, okay. Well, for me, I think it's definitely important that they look at their case and the type of case, for one, because if it's a basic car wreck case or something like that, then a lot of people can handle, and that still does. It's like anything else. There's still people who are even better than others at a car wreck case, to be honest. But a lot of people can maneuver their way through, I think, handling a car wreck case. That's a lot different than if you've got a trucking case. If you were hit by an 18 wheeler, that's substantially different than just an ordinary car wreck case. The rules and regulations are different. The level of expertise required are different. And if you don't ask whether they have experience and how much experience they have in handling those cases, have they actually tried some of those cases, or did they just did they handle a few, three to 10, or have they handled, you know, 50 to hundreds or whatever it may be? If it's a severe accident, wrongful death type case involving a trucking case, which I've handled, you need to know and ask questions to figure out if they have the experience and have handled them. Have they tried them? Because you've got a lot of lawyers who will take a case like that. They might settle the case for $400,000. That case may have been worth $2 million. But the guy who's settling for 400, that's a big payday for him, and he may not have to do much work. But you're going to have to put in the work, know experts, hire experts, take depositions, and do the work the client deserves to get that 2 million. But it could be the exact same case, and I'm sure Eric will tell you that. So you've definitely got to ask questions, and then you have to look at what is your personality. So I tell people, if you don't need a lot of hand holding, what Eric talked about earlier, the counselor part, which is huge, and that's what we have to do all the time. Well, there are some clients who don't need as much. They don't call you every day or once a week. They don't need their hand held and everything else. They'll check in and they'll disappear, see where things are, and then disappear and let you handle it. And that's great. Well, a person like that, um, in my opinion, could be represented by a very large firm, because very large firms have more volume and they don't have as much time and as much staff and as much help to be holding your hand, calling and talking to you every day and every other day, and and so if your personality is you need that, then I believe you should choose a smaller firm, maybe a lawyer with just he's by himself or has two or three lawyers, because they're going to have more time to hold your hand, and that's part of your personality. Whereas if you don't have that personality, then you can be with one of the bigger, larger volume firms. So those are my thoughts.
Good, good. And I'm gonna let you add, jump on that as well, Eric. Just what is your thoughts when you're trying to tell people what they need to be aware of when they're trying to pick representation? What are some key things that they need to be keeping in mind in who they select to do that?
Yeah, I echo everything that Steve just said. In addition to that, two things that popped in my mind are communications. Communication appears to be one of the big things that Steve kind of, alluded to. On the plaintiff side, communication, we're a small law firm. So we focus on, that's one of the big things that we do. When we have clients that call, we have a 24-hour window to return their phone call. We need to make sure that we're responsive. Now, sometimes, you have to get those boundaries in place for certain clients to let them know that, hey, you can't call me every single day, and I'll make sure that, I set up a system where, maybe I give you a call every week or two to give you an update on the case. But communication is one of the biggest things. And again, the second part of that for me, which may be kind of exclusive to my practice in Wisconsin, maybe not. But again, Milwaukee is a very segregated city, and one thing that I found that I am able to offer a lot of clients is that there aren't a lot of black plaintiff personal injury lawyers in Milwaukee. So when I'm talking to clients, I talk to them on a level where I understand what they're dealing with on a day-to-day basis. I understand how it is to be a black man or black person living in Milwaukee, and the struggles that we go through on a day-to-day basis. And I think that a lot of the clients that I have, they can open up to me in ways they may not be able to open up to bigger law firms. And I think that that's an advantage, that I'm able to communicate with them in that way and say, look, I'm going to be real with you. I'm going to be 100% with you when I tell you this. And if you may not like it, you may like it, you may not, but I'm going to be upfront with you and give you the real, And one last thing that I think that people need to be consider when they're hiring an attorney is their experience. For me, for the first 9.5 years of my practice, I did insurance defense work. So I was on the other side of the aisle. I was evaluating these cases and defending big companies, and insurance companies and corporations, with huge SIRs and things like that. And now I'm on the other side, and when I do that, I've seen both sides of the aisle now. So I can kind of, when people come into me with cases, I can evaluate and say, hey, this has some merit. These are problematic areas. So when I'm evaluating cases and attempt to settle them, I can, go on my trial experience. I can go on my experience as a defense attorney and say, look, this is what they're doing. This is what we can do to respond to that. And if, just kind of give them the pros and cons. So that experience is invaluable.
Gotcha, gotcha. I appreciate you all sharing that because again, when it comes to legal representation, especially as I'm sure you all know, just like the situation is with taxes, you see these late night commercials. Call us now. You need us because if you don't call us, nobody will be able to help you. We'll get you, billions of dollars. Reach us today. And and it's just sort of a kind of a scare tactic as well as a kind of blowing it up situation where they get people on the hook of thinking that they're getting ready to hit the lottery overnight, on a legal case. And these people aren't necessarily having the best interest for these individuals. They're just trying to, it's just more of a money grab to bring in clients, but they don't really care about the clients as much as they care about getting whatever money that they can get out of these potential clients that may sign up with them. So it's good to hear your perspectives on that and just giving it not just from the general legal perspective, but just again the ethics of it. The just meeting people where they are and being real, as you stated, being real with people as to how you can help. And I do agree that when you're in a smaller type of setup, that doesn't make you any less effective than a big time company, but it does allow you to have that personalization matter. That communication line is a little bit more flexible, a little bit more open for you to be in tune with the people that you represent. So I love that. I love that. Um, Eric, if you had a chance to talk to the younger Eric, give some words of advice, some words of wisdom in terms of how to handle adversity and challenges, or if somebody listens to this podcast episode and they were like somebody like you, coming from backgrounds and beginnings like you, what would be some of those words of encouragement and wisdom that you would like to share that you would think would be impactful to help someone in that situation?
A few things come to mind. One, is just try to put all your effort into whatever you want to do. When you find something that you like, go full force at it, right? Um, so one example for me is, when I was younger, I played football in high school and in college, right? And I never gave it 100%. Like, as far as, I don't think that I did. I didn't. Some of my buddies would go and um, they would go and run laps, and do training year round and things of that nature. And I was just kind of going on my God given talent, and not really putting the extra work in. And that's one thing that I kick myself on, is just not necessarily related to just football, but going 100% like I do now. Like, when I had my daughter in law school, I knew that I couldn't go half paced. I had to go. I'm working 40 hours. I got a baby at home. I'm going to law school at night. I have to. So that's one thing that I would definitely tell a younger me, or someone that's coming up. When you find something that you want to do, give it 100% all the time, and then it's not a job. It's something that you like. So some people have jobs, some people have careers. And sometimes the difference between that is, you giving that 100% into something that you want to do and that you like to do, then it's not a job. It's not you're not even really working if it's something that you really enjoy doing. Um, and that would be the main thing that I would do, is if you just, sometimes people don't. And another thing that I guess I would tell a younger myself is that, you know, sometimes, life teaches you, lessons, and just learn from them. There's there's a lesson to be learned in good and bad. And sometimes the bad things don't seem like, you can learn anything from them, but you do. And that's a way. There's like, I'll just leave it at that. There's lessons to be learned in good and bad things, and you just need to listen to what God's telling you and what you should be getting from those lessons. So there's good and bad, and there's lessons in good and bad things in life.
Right. And I think that's the important thing to point out in what you said is about we oftentimes look at the quote unquote bad times as things that, oh, I wish that never happened. I wish if I could reverse time, I would eliminate that part of my life. Well, it happened for a reason. And even in those difficult and challenging times, while they may not feel good in that initial moment, because God has allowed that moment to happen for you, there's something that you were to glean from it. There's something that you were to draw from that that's going to make you stronger, wiser, better. You may not see it today, you may not see it tomorrow, but it may be to equip you for down the road. So I think that's very critical that you pointed that out, and that's a powerful message for somebody who, again, younger, not only a younger version of you, but somebody who is like you or is currently going through some of the same type of challenges that you may have gone through at that earlier age, that they needed to hear that message. So thank you for sharing that. Same question for you, Steve. If you had a chance to talk to the younger Steve, or and you had some words of wisdom, some words of encouragement to offer, what would you say to the younger version of you, in terms of how to handle challenges and adversities, and just a good mindset to have, in terms of just dealing with this navigation of the journey we call life? What would your words of wisdom be?
Yeah, I think my advice would be to make sure you seek out, a mentor that are doing the same thing. Meaning you never really have, whether you're taking a particular class, you're in a particular major, you're starting your new.
Your mic went out a little momentarily there, Steve. Don't worry about
To
it. Just
develop
there we
those
go.
friendships and obtain mentors, and have other people who are in it with you. Who are can study with you. You can bounce ideas off of. Maybe some who are a little more experienced and a little ahead of you in that process, depending on what you're doing, whether we're talking about a job or in school or whatever it is, who can give you great advice. And then it makes the learning curve so much easier, because you've got someone who's giving you advice and they've already been there or they've taken that class, and they can help you through it. Of whatever that is. That's being a new husband, being a new father, um, being a new attorney, whatever it may be. Uh, have a colleague and a friend and a mentor, so that it doesn't have to be you against the world type of thing. So
Hmm. And again, that's good stuff. Not feeling like you have to do life alone.
yeah,
And you like I said, in that mentor thing, and the many networking events that I've gone to, and spaces and places that I've entered to, even just as of late, that message is continuing to be resonated, saying, if you found this path that you desire to be on, you need to be surrounding yourself with people who do it better than you and know it better than you, so that you have somebody that you can glean and learn from.
yeah,
If you're not in a constant learning mode, then you're stifling yourself from growth. You're stifling yourself from being able to expand beyond what you currently do. You might have already been successful, or currently being a success in what you do, even the two of you as attorneys, but it's always good to know a little bit more, to shaping up those skills and tighten them up a little bit, or learn a new aspect that perhaps you didn't know. So having that mentorship, and then of course, again, and you two can relate to this as men of faith, is just knowing that when you go through the challenges of life, the importance of God being present there again, so you don't have to go through those difficult, challenging times by yourself.
exactly.
Because there's just certain weights, certain burdens that we were just not meant to lift. They're too heavy for us to lift, but that's what He's there for. That's what God is there for, to walk through that with you, to lift that for you, to walk through those storms with you, to walk through those challenging times with you. So then that way, when you come out on the other side, people won't even know that you've been through anything. You start to get so good at it, unless you personally told them in platforms like this, or in just one-on-one conversations or whatever, they wouldn't know. But they don't have to know, because you don't look like what you've been through. But you made it and you survived it, and you're here to talk about it. You're living it. You're living testimonies of it in your day-to-day walk. So before I let you brothers go, because I know you got busy days ahead of you, um, if you would, Eric, real quick, I want to take an opportunity to. This is the part of our show we like to celebrate, acknowledge. If you got anything exciting going on, anything that you want to share, that you have in the works, or anything like that, we want to love on you, celebrate you, acknowledge you. So tell us what you got going on. Anything in the works that we need to know about? People need to be, you know, need to be aware of, that Eric is involved in or about to be involved in.
Yeah, yeah, a few things. The most important thing right now is my wife is turning 40 in September. So
All right.
that's a big number for her, and we're trying to plan something for her birthday, and so that's a big exciting thing for us. My daughter's going to be a senior, so that's another exciting thing coming up this year, trying to get her ready for school and get those things in order. So those are kind of celebratory things, and I'm also personally celebrating because I was recently selected to be a super lawyer, from Thomson Reuters. So I was a rising star for I think 6 years, and now I've been selected to be a super lawyer. So that's kind of exciting for me personally. So those are a few things going on in my life that we are actually celebrating.
That is awesome, man, and congratulations to you. Congratulations to your wife reaching that milestone of 40, and your daughter getting ready to go into senior year. All those are big deals. I'm pretty sure you are daddy's girl. Um, you
He
know, so
is.
as we all are fathers of daughters, so we understand what that relationship is like and how impactful that is. So, and again, to just to counter the stereotypes of the world that says that black men aren't supposed to be good fathers and good husbands and successful in their respective careers. You're defying all those odds. So I appreciate you sharing that your journey and sharing your acknowledgments of things that accomplishments that you have, because again, that's giving hope to somebody who's going to be listening, a young brother that's listening to you. I pray that he'll be inspired by you, or she'll be inspired by you. To say, hey, that could be me too. I could be Eric. I could be, successful in that role and successful in my marriages and successful in my role as a parent. So appreciate you sharing that. Same thing for you, Steve. Any big news, exciting stuff you got going on? What's going on with you, man?
Um, Not a lot going on right now. Well, my middle daughter just graduated in May from University of North Texas with an education degree, and she starts next week as a kindergarten teacher with Frisco ISD. So we're
Awesome.
very proud of her. She's decorating her classroom and just getting everything ready to start a whole new, in a sense, life and career and everything else. So that's great. And that gave me a little small raise off of that tuition that I was having to pay. The youngest we take back in, I guess, in a week to 10 days to San Diego. She'll be a junior at San Diego State University. So she's got 2 more years to go, and we're excited for what she's doing, and that's really about it. And just staying here, pushing the firm and the career and everything else. So everything's good.
Awesome. And your daughter is your oldest daughter is the one that is kind of into the TV
The
entertainment
acting,
types, the acting.
that's the youngest.
That's the
Yeah,
youngest one.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes. Awesome, awesome, man. Again, great things to acknowledge. Congratulations to you. Congratulations to your kids. And just again, just as I said with Eric, celebrating a black man, successful attorney with his own law practice, a good father, husband, man of God, all of those things. We celebrate that. We don't take it lightly. So thank you for sharing that, and much success and blessings to you as well as to you, Eric. And again, brothers, I thank you for taking out the time to be on the podcast today. I surely do appreciate it. It's been a pleasure hearing your journeys and your stories, learning a little bit more about you. Just when you think you know everybody, you know everything about them. You added another layer
Right.
to that, and I've been blessed in hearing your stories, and I appreciate you sharing that. For those of you who are listening into the podcast, if you've enjoyed what you've heard today, please subscribe, please share, please like, please comment. Because again, here at the Blessings in the Streets podcast, we are all about empowering and uplifting and encouraging one another through our stories, through our journeys, and letting people know that, hey, it doesn't matter what challenges that you face or obstacles that you face, there is a pathway to overcome that. God, of course, is a major component of that. Obviously, you want him to be involved in everything that you do, and that you don't have to give up hope or feel like as if there's no way out just because one door is closed or one barrier is in your way. You just keep persevering and pushing through, and understanding that there is a meaning to this whole process, to these challenges, to these obstacles. There's a purpose in it all. And so we want to embrace the whole journey of it all. We count it all joy, so to speak, as the word teaches us. So here at the Blessings in the Streets podcast, always remember that this is the place where your story is your glory, where your relationships are relevant, and where your journey is your joy. Again, I'm your host, Joseph B. Roberts. Thank you for tuning in. Take care, and until next time, God bless, and we just look forward to tuning in to some more episodes, some more journeys, some more testimonial moments of overcoming those obstacles. So take care of yourselves.